We were trying to find finances to get a national intelligence unit formed, because if you 80% of our results, 85% of our results directly intelligence driven, and all the structured groups that were known for many, many years, we targeted the structured groups and infiltrated the groups, and we dismantled them completely. That was, that's how it should be. But if they hook up some informers here, a lot of times you're paying for just babble. You've got to have criteria that you've got to work with. You don't just pay for babble. Sometimes we put a guy on a retainer and pay him monthly, a small retainer, and then he's told that after 3 months he must produce the goods. If he doesn't produce the solid goods, the retainer's withdrawn. And these guys very commonly will go out and induce people to come and poach in order to get the reward. So you've got to really, really have your finger on the pulse when you're working with your informers. And they will probably keep you guessing for 3 months, 4 months while you're paying. And it's just rubbish, absolute rubbish, fabricated rubbish. Just loose talk, bar talk, nothing solid, nothing substantial to work on. You've got to know what you're doing when you're working with intelligence. We did a lot of that when we were doing the pseudo work. It was all intelligence driven, and it's cat and mouse. And then of course with us, we converted them in the field. So if we had a big punch up in the field, any that were captured and not wounded too seriously, we'd turn them in the field. Now we had a current pace as well. We could go back into the same area with a pace that is known to the local people. But now he's working with us. So all that kind of stuff, we've integrated it into our intelligence work. So we infiltrate the gangs. We also use prisoners, guys that were notorious criminal inside prison, and he's still got comms with his wife on the outside. So we say, listen, we'll look after your wife on the outside while he's inside. And he still communicates with certain members of his gang, and then keeps us informed as to their movements. But he's doing it from prison. At first I couldn't, soon after the war, because of my military background. I could not get involved. I came down here to the Zambezi Valley with the rhino capture and all the stuff that was going on with rhino, and involved in all that kind of stuff. And I said to guys who were leading at that time, put in an aggressive tracking school now. Right where that Zavaru camp is, I said, put an aggressive tracking school in. An anti-poaching academy. Put it in now. They failed to do it. I was educating children at that time. I was running an educational facility, which they shut down. They said that I was training a youth wing. They didn't like the program that I was using. So they shut me down. So I couldn't get involved. And then in 2010, the same colonel that I captured in the field, he was terrorist commander and became a colonel of the SAS, was approached by the director of national parks, who has since deceased. Said, do you know anybody from the military who would be prepared to train our men? So he said, yes, I do, but he's a white man. He was also an ex-terrorist. So the two of them discussed it, and then I got a call from Tappy to say, you want to train some game rangers, anti-poaching stuff. And so I said, what about the background, Tappy? He said, just drop the name Loose guys, don't mention that stuff. Just simply get on with tracking. So I did that. So in 2010, I trained the first group of game rangers, national parks guys. And then it just snowballed from there. and I continue to train parks, more parks than anybody else, because the mandate was to train national parks. So I wasn't doing any private companies or NGOs, simply national parks. Investigated a few times by CIO, but because I have a mandate from parks, no problem. I ran one private or integrated course, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, and Zim, combined game ranges. I put that together, but I had to have CIO present on the course. They wouldn't let me do it without their presence. But it ran, and it was a wonderful course, and the collaboration across, ranger to ranger, sharing ideas, and it worked beautifully. And we wanted to get going a bit more on those, and it was stopped by CIO. So although training national parks is not a problem, we have a JV with training I do with parks. And when I train down in the Savi Valley, because we're an independent service provider, and we're providing that service together with parks. Those rhino are national asset. So parks are ultimately the custodians of those rhino. So they mandated us as well to look after those rhino. So we only train men who are working directly with rhino, and rhino that are state property, national property. It takes, firstly it takes a ranger who is going to be prepared to be disciplined. That's number one. Personal discipline is a prerequisite. Loyalty, prerequisite. Keenness, prerequisite. Aggressive determination, that attribute we develop by training. So aggressive determination in a simple way is you just do not let go. Yeah. You latch onto that spore and you don't let go. You simply don't. Doesn't matter what odds you're facing. You don't let go. Day and night. Doesn't matter where it takes you. And that's the attribute that they need. If you can develop that attribute in the game ranger, you've got a good man. Then he needs to be managed, and his morale, all the other stuff that goes with managing people. There's probably about 13 or 14 different principles that we use to develop that. Yeah, and of course mental stamina is the one principle which we approach. Not military style or anything of that nature, but mental perseverance and determination is a key to the development of aggressive determination. So that is number one for a tracker, is mental perseverance. And that happens by the actual tracking that we give him, and then there's what we call lost ball procedures that he goes through. There's certain procedures that he needs to conduct in order to be a successful combat tracker. And unless he complies with the principles, we automatically fail him. He doesn't even go remotely to the next level. Yeah. For example, a very simple example, a man is on the spawn, he's tracking. He becomes a little bit uncertain of himself. So there's a principle. First, principle number one, stop. The call sign behind you. Next thing is indication, all silent signals indicate why you're stopping. Fingers pointing to the air means I've lost spoor, I'm uncertain. So everybody knows that. So they wait for him. Then he goes directly out to his front. He returns. He determines that, the tracker. He's not told that by anybody. He must learn and determine that. He looks at the line of flight and he goes out and he comes back. Then he'll go to the left and come back, to the right and come back. he eliminates the immediate front. If he fails to find, he does a 360 within the flanks, 360 degree search. Small, but it's tight. Then he goes back 30 meters and conducts a 360 engulfing the whole call sign. Because of the anti-tracking techniques, a poacher will be walking, he'll find a nice bit of terrain to balk you, he'll give you some nice spoor to see. You've got it visual, you can see it very, very clearly before you. Then you go up into some difficult terrain. That's where he's been walking for the last 2 hours. Then he gets onto a bit of difficult terrain and he sidesteps and he comes back and he doubles back out that way. And then the student, the game ranger, will spend his time looking in the front, eliminating the front. So unless he goes through the procedure, he can waste 5 hours, 6 hours looking there when in fact they've gone there. Mm-hmm. And that we've learned through just solid experience and years of tracking. That takes mental perseverance. You felt the heat today. This is one of the dynamics that a tracker needs to be able to work with. Learn how to work in it. You've got these little flies that are bugging you. Out there in the Mapani forests now, you'll almost go insane with the volume of these things in your face. He's confronted with that, he's confronted with the heat, he's confronted with water needs, and so on. So the aggressive determination is where we're going. So we stick with him out there in the field. We never stop for lunch. It's the hottest time of the day. He needs to travel through that. The sun is up there. You get no shape, shine, and shadow. It's the most difficult time to track. Mental determination, perseverance, aggressive determination. It's all developed around those principles and those situations that we put them into. Yeah, it's hard work. It actually is. But once he's developed it and he's done the mileage, we 21 days, approximately 17 k's a day. That also is determined by the tracker. If he enters difficult time, that slows down. But strictly speaking, we will cover 17 k's a day on a tracking course. By 3 weeks, he's done a lot of miles. Mm-hmm. Again, if you consider putting 10 guys on a course, you've got to do a minimum of 10 k's for each student just to do 1 kilometer of tracking. So he's working, and he's working hard to get the mileage. Mm-hmm. He has to, in order to give him a good shot at developing his tracking skills and that vital attribute of aggressive determination. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then of course the tracking. The tracking is a big part of his selection, and if he passes his tracking, that's great. If he doesn't, quite often the guys have other qualities that you need, mm-hmm. and you might not use him as an A-grade tracker, or even as a good tracker. But you can use him on a flank, you can use him in many other roles. So, and when I've trained parks, we've never eliminated any student. If I get 25 students, it doesn't matter how bad he is, he stays with me through the duration of the course to elevate the general standard across parks. Mm-hmm. So, mm-hmm. Yeah. A combat tracking team is made up of 4 guys. You've got a left flank, right flank, a tracker, and a controller. That is the composition of a standard anti-poaching combat team. Depending on the number of poachers that you're actually following, you beef that up. You always overestimate rather than underestimate your enemy. So then the composition changes. We put 2 on the left flank, 2 on the right flank, a tracker or dog handler, tracker, because they're all trackers as well, and the controller. That's what it looks like, the composition of 6 men and a dog. And each man in that team is a capable tracker, he's a capable controller, he's a capable dog handler. So they can interchange the positions. So you don't put too much burden on one guy or 2 guys. You rotate them. As it becomes a little bit of, the guy becomes a little bit erratic, he's getting tired, he's flagging a little upstairs, you switch him around. So every man is capable of conducting the duties of each position. The controller is making tactical decisions as the formation. He leads. They are all self-controlled men. He uses a dog whistle to control the whole formation, including the dogs. The whistle we use, we turn it up for us. For the dog, we close it off to where you and I can't hear it. But the dog hears it perfectly, and the man whistle, only you and I can hear it because we're trained to hear it. So he's controlling. The men are, first of all, it's like a set of lungs. As the terrain changes, they self-adjust according to the terrain. So as you're moving through the terrain, it's getting a little bit thick on the right flank, for example. The flank will naturally start to draw back. Otherwise, you're going to lose visual contact with him. And if things go wrong just then, it becomes dangerous. So he self-adjusts and come back. And if he doesn't self-adjust, the controller is there to give him he'll check in, and the controller will tell him, pull back. So he overrides where the self-control is lacking. And then he's continuously watching the terrain tactically. So he might want to move the left flank further out, or he might want to draw it in. So he's constantly making tactical decisions. And when he starts to flag, you pull in somebody else and you change positions. So every man is capable with his weapon. He's a capable tracker. He's a capable controller. He's a capable dog handler. And he can do GAC, which is ground air control. He can bring in an aircraft over his position and conduct whatever he wants to do with that aeroplane. So strictly speaking, it's a formidable team.